April 15th, 1941. Midnight. Somewhere deep in the Libyan desert, 200 miles behind enemy lines. The scorching moon casts long, fractured shadows across a barren landscape littered with jagged rocks and the distant silhouette of enemy camps. Sandstorms have ceased, but the night remains sharp with biting cold, a cruel contrast to the blistering days. You can almost taste the grit on your tongue. The air vibrates with the faint hum of engines, distant voices muffled like ghosts speaking through the darkness. A figure crouches low by a cluster of thorny acacia trees. Captain David Stirling, barely 25, with eyes like cold steel, listens to the soft whisper of his men. His breath fogs, mingling with the scent of gun oil and sweat. Around him, a small band of soldiers moves silently, barely more than shadows. Themselves, their faces marked by grime and fierce determination. They are the beginnings of something unprecedented, an idea born of desperation and daring. A force to operate where conventional armies cannot. A handful of men who will strike with lightning speed, then disappear. The desert night is alive with danger. Nearby, German patrol trucks rumble along unmarked tracks, searching for signs of resistance. Twice, Stirling's heart jumps as a dog barks far off, and boots echo faintly on stone. But they hold still, breath held, nerves taut like piano wires. This is no ordinary raid. You can almost feel the weight of history pressing down in this remote desert. Every movement counts. One mistake could mean capture or death. And tonight, Stirling's men prepare for their inaugural strike against an unsuspecting Italian airfield. A sudden crackle in the radio breaks the silence. A coded message confirming all teams are in position. Stirling's jaw tightens. The mission begins. But they have no idea the price they will pay, or the legend they are about to forge. The night air hums with tense anticipation as the small SAS team advances toward the Italian airfield near Sidi Hainish. The moon, now high and cold, illuminates rows of enemy aircraft parked under flimsy canvas hangars. You hear the crunch of sand beneath boot heels and the faint clink of gear shifting in the dark. Every nerve is raw. Every shadow could conceal a sentry. Captain Stirling signals a halt. Eyes scan the perimeter, a guard pacing, a flicker of cigarette flame. They wait, breath shallow, until the guard's figure blurs into the shadows. Then, like wraiths, the men slip through the fence, carrying homemade explosive charges dangling from harnesses. You can feel the heat of impending destruction before the first charge detonates. A percussive boom that shatters the stillness like a thunderclap. Flames erupt, licking the night sky. Aircraft burst into brilliant fireballs, their fuel igniting in sheets of orange and red. Alarms scream in the distance, and men scramble, startled. In moments, the airfield is chaos. Explosions ripple through hangars. Engines roar to life, but confusion reigns. Stirling's team melts back into desert shadows, vanishing as swiftly as they came. But not before the enemy's response begins a howl of machine gun fire cutting into the darkness. Bullets slap against rocks and sand, near enough to make hearts pound faster. The desert speaks in gunshots and screams. Amid the exodus, one of Stirling's men, Sergeant Paddy Mayne, lingers too long. A tinny crack, the sharp report of a rifle rings out. Mayne drops, clutching his leg, blood pooling beneath him in the dust. Pain twists his face, but blink by blink, he forces himself to crawl, pulling along the fragile line between survival and capture. Behind them, searchlights slice the air, turning night into harsh glare. The enemy is mobilizing dangerously fast. Can a handful of men outrun an entire army's wrath? And what will this reckless raid ignite? The desert is no longer a silent witness. It is a raging battlefield, echoing with desperate breath and pounding hooves as Stirling's dwindling team races against the tightening noose of Axis forces. Sergeant Paddy Mayne's wounded leg drags raggedly through the sand. Every heartbeat pounds agony through his body, but surrender is impossible. The desert is merciless. Death can come not only from bullets, but from thirst, exhaustion, and the unforgiving terrain. You feel the cold sweat dripping down your face as the enemy's vehicles thunder closer, slashing the quiet with the roar of engines and machine guns. The scent of burning fuel and gunpowder is thick in the still night air. The men split, shadows scattering in every direction to confuse their hunters. Stirling calls low over the radio, voice barely more than a whisper. Coordinate the rendezvous. Hold the line. In the chaos, a sudden voice pierces the darkness, a radio call from the main British forces. Reinforcements are hours away, if they come at all. Paddy falls behind. His blood darkens the pale sand. But even wounded, his spirit burns fiercest. Crawling like a wounded animal beneath an unforgiving moon, he drags himself towards a distant ridge. From the ridge, Stirling watches the enemy advance, blood pounding in his ears. To others, he is a reckless commander, but here, he is the lifeline between hope and despair. One question lingers in the suffocating night. Could this fragile band of men endure? Or would the desert bury their rebellion before it truly began? The answer will echo far beyond the sands. Sunrise bleeds into the desert, painting the horizon with bruised pinks and harsh golds, revealing scars left behind by the night's violent whispers. Silence settles, heavy and wary. Amid the shattered wreckage of the Italian airfield's remains, only the occasional twitch of a vulture disrupts the stillness. Captain David Stirling, bloodied yet unbroken, gathers what's left of his team. Faces streaked with grime, eyes hardened from the night's hell, the men know this was more than a raid. It was a declaration. The SAS had arrived. From this crucible of fire and desperation, a new kind of warfare was born, one rooted in stealth, speed, and psychological strike. Stirling's vision was clear. Unleash small, elite teams to cripple the Axis's supply and morale far behind their front lines. No longer bound by traditional battle lines, they would be shadows in the night, harbingers of chaos. You could almost feel the shift in the air, the ignition of something unstoppable. Yet the cost is visible in every man's eyes, the whisper of losses that ripple through the ranks like a ghost. Paddy Mayne's limp is a constant reminder of vulnerability, and yet the fire within him and all of them burns brighter than ever. Messages crackle from Cairo. Command is stunned, partly incredulous, but quietly hopeful. If this operation's boldness paid off, it could change the entire war. But the desert is unforgiving. For every victory, a new danger lurks. The fledgling SAS faces their fiercest test yet. Will their legend become a footnote or a turning point? Months have passed. The harsh desert sun beats down relentlessly around the SAS, new base near the Nile's edge. A different kind of war is taking shape now. One played out not with massive armies, but with whispers, sabotage, and silent footsteps behind enemy lines. Captain Stirling and his officers pore over maps riddled with enemy supply routes, airfields and railways, the arteries keeping the Axis war machine alive. You can smell the rich scent of dry paper mixed with fresh coffee, the tension thick as plans that could mean life or death. From small teams of 5 or 6, the SAS grows. They recruit volunteers from every corner of the British Empire, men with desert survival skills, unexplained bravery, and nerves hardened to steel. They learn to live off the land, to navigate by stars, to strike like lightning and vanish like smoke. But with notoriety comes peril. The Axis powers soon brand them terrorists, vowing ruthless pursuit. German and Italian forces increase patrols, mount counter-raids, and set traps designed to choke the Jupice Ace's freedom. Stirling watches his men grow colder, harder marked not only by battle, but the burden of secrecy. They become ghosts, their stories whispered in enemy camps, fueling fear, but also stirring ruthless determination. Yet the SAS faces not just enemies in uniform, but the constant shadow of betrayal and capture, the fate worse than death. In the chilling stillness of one desert dawn, reinforcements arrive carrying grim news. Their next mission will stretch beyond the sands into the unknown. Is the SAS ready to cross into territories even deadlier than the desert? The real test of resilience and cunning awaits. October 1943. A cold, misty dawn blankets the jagged Apennine Mountains of Italy. The familiar harsh sun of the desert is replaced by damp chill and thick forests cloaked in fog. You can almost hear the crackle of wet leaves underfoot and the cautious breaths of men who must move unseen beneath a canopy alive with the distant roar of artillery. The SAS, once desert specters, are now transplanted into Europe's most treacherous terrain. Their mission: disrupt the German supply lines, strangling the Allied advance after Italy's surrender. The change in landscape demands new tactics, less open combat, more assassination, sabotage, and forging quiet alliances with partisan fighters. Captain David Stirling, now promoted and hardened by months of brutal combat, surveys his men. They carry not only weapons, but secrets. Their operations fueled by shadows and whispers untraceable hands that strike with lethal precision before fading into the fog. On a cold night by a crumbling farmhouse, an SAS patrol prepares explosives with steady hands, the weight of the next hours pressing on them like the dense mist. Nearby, German trucks thunder on narrow mountain roads, lifelines that once again become targets for fiery destruction. The balance of war teeters on these silent strikes. But this battlefield holds new dangers, neighbors who may betray them, partisan groups with uncertain loyalties, and a ruthless enemy growing wiser to their tricks. Amongst the fog and fire, Stirling receives word that his old comrade, Sergeant Paddy Mayne, has been appointed to lead a critical mission behind enemy lines. Mayne is ferocious courage and ruthless efficiency. Make him perfect for the most dangerous operations, ones that could turn the tide or shatter their fragile advantage. Yet, even the bravest men must wrestle with fear. What sacrifices will these shadow warriors demand next? The mountains hide answers, but none are kind. The early hours are filled with the hushed tension of unfamiliar voices, speaking in a tangled mix of accents and dialects. The SAS camp is alive with whispered negotiations as patrols move cautiously through dense woods. You can sense the fragile trust being forged among men united by a single, deadly purpose and equally vulnerable to the sharp edge of betrayal. Sergio, a wiry partisan leader with eyes as cold as the mountain wind, meets Sergeant Paddy Mayne beneath the skeletal branches of an ancient oak. They exchange terse handshakes and wary glances. Their alliance is a marriage of necessity, stitched together by common goals, but frayed by suspicion. The terrain is riddled with Germans and fascists, well acquainted with the paths they must protect. Both SAS and partisans plot ambushes, sabotage of railway lines, and the disruption of German communications. Every mission is a gamble, with razor-thin margins for error. As Mayne leads a strike team into a remote village, rumored to house a German communications hub, the chilling knowledge hangs thick. There may be informants watching from the shadows, ready to sell secrets for a promise of survival. Night crawls in like an ominous tide. A sudden crack of twigs snapping underfoot breaks the silence. Men freeze. Eyes dart into darkness. Is it friend or foe? The answer will decide who lives and who dies. The cold mountain fog twists and turns like a living thing, swallowing men whole. Sergeant Paddy Mayne's team halts, breath visible in the icy air, as a figure steps out from the shadows, hands raised in cautious greeting. The tension snaps taut. Eyes scan for weapons. Words are exchanged in broken English and hurried Italian. But beneath the fragile veneer of alliance, a lethal game unfolds. A partisan with twisted loyalties, feeding secrets back to the enemy. Behind the mask of camaraderie lies a vendetta. Betrayal is a poison no one can smell until it's too late. Minutes later, the German forces swarm the village with brutal precision. Gunfire shatters windows, echoing like thunderclaps through the narrow alleys. Mayne's men scatter, bullets ripping through cold air, every step a gamble with fate. You can almost hear the pounding heartbeat in Mayne's ears, fierce and relentless, as he rallies his team amidst the chaos. One by one, they vanish into the dense woods, ghosts escaping death's tightening grip. But one question haunts the silence left behind. Who among their allies was the Judas in the mist? The answer will send shockwaves through the SAS and test their resolve like never before. The embers of betrayal smolder as dawn pierces the mountain fog, revealing a landscape scarred by gunfire and broken trust. Sergeant Mayne, grim-faced and battered, gathers the remnants of his fractured team beneath twisted pines, still dripping with frost. You can almost feel the weight of exhaustion pressing into the brittle silence. A silence that carries more than mourning. It hums with the determination to fight on. Captain Stirling's voice crackles over the radio, steady and unwavering despite the grim report. The betrayal has cost them dearly, but the SAS will not falter. Their missions must continue broader, more daring than ever. From the ruins, new strategies rise. Deeper integration with partisans, more ruthless counterintelligence, and shadow networks that defy even the most brutal Axis countermeasures. The war is evolving into a game of shadows, and the SAS is becoming a master. But each victory leads into the next battle, and the cost creeps higher. Whispers of a new, nearly impregnable German fortress have reached the SAS command, promising the ultimate test of their skills and courage. Will these shadow warriors overcome the fortress's iron grip, or will history record their fall? The mountain wind carries the question unanswered. Winter deepens along the rugged borders of Nazi Germany's western defenses. The towering expanse, known as the Siegfried Line, looms like a steel dragon, coiled along the hillside's thick concrete bunkers, barbed wire entanglements, and labyrinthine tunnels guarding the heart of the Reich. The cold bites sharper here. Frost clings to every stone, and the wind howls with a merciless fury. The SAS, now seasoned by the desert and mountain campaigns, prepares to infiltrate this fortress of fear. Their mission: sabotage deep behind the front lines to pierce the seemingly impenetrable facade and sow chaos in the enemy. Spine. Captain Stirling and Sergeant Mayne stand side by side as they study grim maps in a dimly lit cellar beneath a farmhouse in Luxembourg. Every line, every notation represents lives, the fragile thread between success and annihilation. You can almost feel the oppressive weight closing in, the heavy silence interrupted only by distant artillery barrages, echoing like thunderclaps through the frozen forest. The men equip themselves with silenced pistols, explosive charges, and intelligence stolen from the shadows of enemy occupancy. This is no longer guerrilla warfare. It is a symphony of precision and deadly intent. Ahead lies a fortress, some say, cannot be breached. But in the hearts of these shadow warriors burns a defiant truth. No fortress is impregnable. The question is decades old. How far will they go to make history? Underneath a shivering moonless night, the SAS team creeps through dense German patrols along the outer reaches of the Siegfried Line. Branches crack softly beneath their boots, and the chorus of night insects is overridden by the pounding of their hearts and the cold whisper of the wind through barbed wire. Sergeant Paddy Mayne signals a halt. Ahead, concrete pillboxes sprout like malignant tumors from the frozen earth, their gun ports glinting faintly in the darkness. The enemy sleeps or believes they do, while these men prepare to write a new chapter of terror in their minds. Silence is their ally, but the smallest mistake could lead to violent death. You can almost hear the faint clinking of explosives being set, wires delicately looped around steel supports, ready to sever the flow of men and munitions. Minutes stretch into eternity as the SAS soldiers melt into the ghostly shadows, moving like phantoms toward their targets. Suddenly, a lone flicker of light pierces the darkness. A sentry cigarette, a breath caught in the throat, a frozen heartbeat. One wrong move. The entire mission could unravel. And in this precarious moment, the fate of the operation hangs by a razor's edge. The deafening roar of detonations shatters the fragile silence, sending shockwaves through the frozen forest. Pillboxes are ripped apart. Barbed wire hisses as it melts in roaring flames, and enemy alarm bells shriek into the night. You can almost feel the ground trembling underfoot and taste the acrid smoke filling the cold air. The SAS forces vanish into the darkness like shadows scattered on the wind, leaving confusion and panic in their wake. German soldiers scramble, weapons firing blindly, while command centers are plunged into chaos. Sergeant Mayne, blood pounding in his ears, rallies his men through the tangled woods, retreating with the ruthless efficiency that has become their trademark. Every heartbeat, every step is measured against the enemy's response, a deadly game of cat and mouse. The fortress's steel grip has been cracked, but the price is glaringly clear. Not all will return. The cost of victory presses tight against every soul. Captain Stirling's voice cuts through the radio. Static a terse order to regroup and assess, but behind the command lies an unspoken truth. The war has changed, and so have these men. Their legend is no longer just whispered in shadow. It is roared into history. But the question lingers. What new dangers will arise as the fortress's defenses crumble? The answer lies waiting in the whispering ruins. The dawn breaks pale and cold over a war-ravaged Europe, the sun piercing through smoke and dust, lighting fragments of shattered infrastructure and burned villages. The Special Air Service, forged in the crucible of deserts and mountains, now stands as a whispered legend, an invisible blade slicing through the heartbeat of the Axis. You can almost feel the silent tribute of the countless unsung men who vanished into darkness to disrupt, sabotage, and ignite hope in the darkest hours. Their missions cloaked in secrecy, etched in danger, shifted the course of countless battles without fanfare or glory. Captain David Stirling's tireless vision endured beyond his years, inspiring generations of special forces worldwide. Sergeant Paddy Mayne's fierce courage became mythic, a symbol of relentless spirit even when faced with betrayal and impossible odds. Yet for every story of triumph, there was sacrifice stitched quietly into the shadows, families waiting, comrades lost, and scars unseen by history's broad brush. The SAS's true mission was never merely combat. It was to become the shadows it wore as edge. The silent deterrent, the impossible strike that unsettled enemies and inspired allies. In the stillness of remembrance, one question remains. How do you honor warriors whose greatest victories were the ones you never saw? Their story lives on in every silent patrol, every quiet act of defiance across generations. The secret missions ended, but the legacy never will.